Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho. We're coming to you this Friday on the final day, or the 31st day of October, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matters. Get to the stories that matter today. The Philippine Navy refutes Mike Defensor's allegation that Marines are protecting witness Orly Guteza. Senator Ping Lacson also slammed Defensor's claim, asking, how much more fakery can we take? People are expected to flock the cemeteries starting today to honor their departed loved ones. We'll provide updates from major cemeteries later on in our broadcast. And the Michelin Guide has officially launched its inaugural Philippines list, and it features over 100 restaurants from Manila, nearby provinces, and Cebu. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first in the agenda. The Philippine Navy has denied claims that controversial flood control witness Orly Guteza is under the Marines' custody and protection. This contradicts the statement made the other day by former Congressman Mike Defensor. Here is a report.
The military is not hiding flood control witness Orly Guteza. That statement came directly from AFP Chief of Staff General Romeo Bronner. This follows former Anak Kalusugan Party List Representative Mike Defensor's statement on One News's Storycon that Guteza was under the custody of the Philippine Marines. But even Bronner said he had no knowledge of such a claim. Despite that, he stressed that the military would never conceal Guteza if he were under their care.
I have no personal knowledge po kung talagang nandun sa Philippine Marines si Guteza. But let me make it clear na kung nandun nga siya, ay wala pong intensyon ang Armed Forces of the Philippines na itago yung mga witnesses natin. In fact, tutulungan pa ho namin yung korte or kung anumang mga ahensya or bodies, investigating bodies na i-produce yung mga witnesses natin para makatulong po sa ating investigation, lalong-lalo na po laban sa corruption.
Before that, the Philippine Navy had already issued a statement clarifying that Guteza was not in their custody. They also said they no longer have control over him since he has long been retired.
Usually the whereabouts or the statements or testimonies or the actions of anyone who has retired already is not anymore under the radars of the Philippine Navy, especially if he's not a reservist. I would like to highlight that Mr. Guteza is not a reservist because when he retired in June 2020, the law was not applicable to him.
Even Senate President pro tempore Ping Lacson slammed Defensor's allegation. Lacson even questioned, how much more fakery can we take? Defensor has yet to comment on the issue. Guteza was introduced by Senator Rodante Marcoleta as a witness before the Blue Ribbon Committee in September regarding the alleged flood control project anomaly. He claimed he personally delivered suitcases filled with cash to former Congressman Saldico and former House Speaker Martin Romualdez, a claim both men denied. Earlier, the Manila Regional Trial Court discovered that the signature of the lawyer in Guteza's sworn statement, which was read during the Senate hearing, was forged. This was confirmed by the lawyer named in the notarized affidavit, Attorney Pechi Rose Espera. Because of this, several lawmakers have called on the Department of Justice to investigate Guteza.
The Independent Commission for Infrastructure is intensifying its pursuit of restitution from individuals implicated in the flood control corruption scandal, aiming to reclaim billions in stolen public funds. In an interagency meeting yesterday, ICI Chairman Andres Reyes said that the technical working group will soon finalize a framework to strengthen coordination, information sharing, and legal action for the recovery of assets.
We know that every peso na ninakaw ay tamang piso na wala sa ating bansa. At mahalaga po ang magsama-sama kami lahat dito at magtulungan para maibalik ang pera na pag-aari ng taong bayan.
Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon confirmed that the Office of the Solicitor General will lead the filing of civil forfeiture cases against those involved. The Anti-Money Laundering Council has already frozen assets valued at 5.2 billion pesos, believed to be connected to the corruption scheme.
Once na, halimbawa, no, na-freeze na yung assets ng mga opisyal, pag tinignan yung kanilang salin, kung di nagtutugma, ang presumption doon agad is illegal yon. So, yun na ang magiging basehan ng kaso.
Huge crowds are expected to start arriving today at the Manila North Cemetery to honor and remember their departed loved ones. And for the latest updates on the ground, we have mobile journalist Mary Monreyes joining us from the Manila North Cemetery. Magandang umaga sa iyo. Kamusta naman dyan?
Magandang umaga, Gretchen. Inaasahan na ngayong Undas, starting around October 29 until November 2, tinatansya na lalagpas ng 2 milyon ang bilang ng mga taong pupunta dito. In comparison, last year, around 1.7 million yung bilang ng mga katao. And bukod dyan, ang naobserbahan din natin, mas naging extended na yung visiting hours. Last year kasi 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. yung extension lang ng time na maaaring bumisita dito, whereas noong 2023 5 a.m. yon to 5 p.m. pero ngayon 5 a.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. Pero around 8 o'clock, magpapalabas na yung mga nagbabantay din dito. And isang security measure na sinisiguro nila para raw walang makakatakas o makakapuslit is yung mga ID. Meron din kasi mga nakatira dito sa loob ng Manila North. Around 54 hectares ito, malawak ito. Libo-libo mga katao, mga residente mismo yung naninirahan dito, nag-aalaga ng mga nicho, ng mga nakahimlay dito. And ang tinitignan nila pagka magsasarado na yung gate ng Manila North, yung ID para raw ma-check na taga rito sila. Bukod dyan, so far yung ilan sa mga ipinagbabawal pa rin na pinagbabantayan nila, mga matatalim na bagay, ang sigarilyo, ang vape, ang flammable na mga likido, pati ang mga may ingay na bagay kasama na dyan ang mga instrumento tulad ng gitara, sound system, speakers, and even yung mga dinadala na mga pagkain o kaya naman daw mga tubig kasi bawal ang mga vendor dito sa loob, sa labas lang sila. Chine-check din ang mga nakabantay sa main entrance kung sakali raw na parang questionable yung dami ng bit-bit na maaari raw nilang ibenta dito sa loob. Yun nga lang ang naobserbahan din natin, Gretchen. Bagaman ipinagbabawal at sinasabi zero vendors na dapat, meron pa ring mga nagpapwesto ng kanilang tindahan. Nandito tayo sa sentro sa Rotonda. For example, dito sa likuran natin, dyan may mga nakapwesto na dyan naka-table. Dito rin sa may First Street, yung mga payong na yan na nakikita ninyo, nakapwesto dyan. May mga siomai, may mga soft drinks, may mga cup noodles. And kani-kanina lang nag-page na rin ang pulisya para nga raw ligpitin ang mga ito. And bukod dyan, dito sa likuran natin, nakapwesto rin ang pulis. Merong assistance desk din dito. Even ang mga tent ng Red Cross, maging ng Manila Health Department na nakaantabay sakaling mamaya pagka uminit na ang panahon o nagsiksika na dito, tansya raw nila baka merong mga mahilo o kaya naman ay himatayin. Gretchen.
Oy, Marymon, parang wala masyadong tao sa likod mo, ano? Anong oras inaasahan ng dagsa ng tao dyan?
Oo, so far papatak pa lang ng between 500 to 1,000 yung bilang for this day pa lang. That's from 5 a.m. to ang huli natin nakuhang tally is from 5 a.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. Ang inaasahan daw nila around noon hanggang afternoon, doon na raw mag-start talaga yung influx ng mga tao dito. And precisely yung ilan sa mga nakausap din natin na nagbabanta, yung mga nakiklicker, yung mga nagbibilang, karamihan daw kasi itong mga lumipas na araw na raw pumunta dito para raw hindi na masabayan yung dami ng tao, especially bukas, November 1.
Oo, sana ganyan pa rin ang panahon, no? Buong araw. Kasi kahapon, ang lakas ng ulan at pabugso-bugso. We hope for good weather all throughout and of course, the calmness of the situation at your back. In the meantime, maraming salamat sa iyong paunang report mula dyan sa Manila North Cemetery. We have mobile journalist Mary Monreyes reporting to us live. Meanwhile, the number coding scheme is suspended across the whole of Metro Manila today. The MMDA said the lifting of the scheme is in observance of All Saints' Day Eve, a special non-working holiday. The agency reminded motorists that number coding is also automatically suspended on all official and special non-working holidays. The MMDA urged the public to plan their trips early and drive carefully during the Undas break. Up next, statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth or SALNs of more lawmakers are being made public. We'll discuss this with the UP Law Professor Paulo Tamase. When Morning Matters returns, keep it here. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. More lawmakers are releasing their statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth or SALNs. At the House of Representatives, Navotas City Congressman Toby Chanco and House Senior Deputy Minority Leader Edgar Erice were the latest to make their SALNs public. Chanco declared over 200 million as his net worth, while Erice declared 70 million. Members of the Makabayan Bloc were the first to release their documents. At the upper house, all 24 senators have disclosed their SALNs. Senator Mark Villar emerged as the richest member with a net worth of 1.26 billion pesos, followed by Senator Raffy Tulfo, who filed a joint SALN with his wife, Representative Jocelyn Tulfo. Senator Chis Escudero reported the lowest wealth at nearly 19 million pesos. And for his insights on our lawmaker SALNs, we have Paulo Tamase, Assistant Professor at the UP College of Law. Magandang umaga sa'yo. Welcome back to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Gretchen, and to everyone viewing your program.
Okay, over the past weeks, we've seen these releases of SALNs. May iba na kapani-paniwala naman, may iba na sabi nga ng publiko ay nakakataas ng kilay. What do you make of the declarations so far?
Well, SALNs are an important but an imperfect instrument. They're important because they're the actual sworn declaration of a public officer that this is his assets, liabilities, and net worth. But they're imperfect because there are many ways to evade SALN. Even in the past, in the 1990s and the 2000s, and the corruption allegations at the time. One of the principal allegations is that people often hide, or public officers hide, their wealth in under dummies, or different names, or their associates. So hindi siya perfecto na instrument, but it's important precisely because of how the public reacts to them. So for example, there's a SALN that shows that this public officer only has the certain amount of assets, but the lifestyle is so incongruent to those assets, then the public would start asking important questions. The media would be triggered by those questions. And then you have the important conversations around whether that public officer is declaring his assets faithfully, and if not, why not?
So it's exactly this reaction from the public that we want to elicit. No? But in terms of legal liabilities and cases that can be filed, pwede na bang kumuha dito sa mga public declaration? Kumbaga parang side by side na yan. For example lang, kasi kay Senator Chis Escudero, nagulat ang lahat na siya yung poorest senator when yung kanyang iniregalo kay Heart Evangelista ay more than yung kanyang SALN. So, pwede na ba yung tignan at busisiin at pwede na ba mag-build ng case from there?
Well, yes. False declaration in a SALN is itself punishable. It's perjury. It's lying under oath. And while, of course, anyone who files a case against, just using your example, Senator Escudero would have to indeed prove that there was lying in the SALN, then that would require evidence to show the discrepancy between what he actually owns at the given time that he declared his assets, liability, and net worth, and what was declared in the SALN. So that can already start a case as long as there's proof. It's one thing to have allegations concerning these misdeeds. It's another to find good proof that will survive the scrutiny, let's say before the Ombudsman if it's an administrative case, or before the courts if it's a criminal case. So pwedeng yun yung the starting point basically.
But some people actually belittle the value of SALNs because many of the line items there's a perception that they're heavily undervalued. For example, yung mga presyo ng properties, parang pag tinignan mo, para alam mo na sobrang mahal yan sa market value, pero pag tinignan mo sa papel, biglang ganyan na palang kaliit. And I guess I wonder if it's because of the real property taxes. Di ba, usually mas mababa talaga yung rate niyan kasi you go to the local government to ask to assess value. Paano yung ganon? At pangalawa, if entries are undervalued, what could happen? Could that fall under false declaration?
Well, to begin with the second question, yes, if entries are undervalued, then they fall under making that false declaration, that perjurious statement. But whether the amount is correctly reflected, people also have to look closer into the SALN. So assets are generally required to be declared both for their assessed value, which would correspond also to their market value, no? And their acquisition cost. How much was that asset purchased? So it's possible that over time, mag-iiba talaga yung presyo ng asset. No? It will go up, shoot up. But if you purchased property 20, 30 years ago, then yung acquisition cost niya would also be very little. So yung bottom line figures, the amount, the numbers that are reported in the media, I think that's of secondary importance. The most important is actually the asset itself, diba? If it says that this property is in an exclusive subdivision, then that would be that would trigger, for example, questions about why sobrang undervalued no property. And I think just to inform the public, the SALN itself, which they see reported on media, has a lot of information redacted. And rightfully so, I think. No? Addresses of these public officers, pwede naman talagang mag-claim ng some balance of privacy in their favor. But the copies that would have been submitted with the Ombudsman, those are not redacted. And I think, it would be within the purview of a proper request, let's say by media, by watchdogs, to request the full information about what the SALN provides. When public officers accept public office, they accept that certain privacy rights are given away in the interest of accountability and public scrutiny. So, dapat tignan actually yung asset, hindi yung value only.
What's the rule on those who are married, no? Kasi for example, Senator Escudero can claim that he has a prenuptial agreement with Heart Evangelista. Paano yun? Pagka may prenup pa, hindi na kailangan isama yung wealth ni Mrs. Or, does that exempt him from disclosing that? Paano? How does that work?
Two brief points. The first is under the law, under RA 6713, spouses are required to actually declare their wealth as well. So public officers and their spouses, as well as any children below 18 living in their households. But there's a civil service guidance, memorandum circular in 2021, which says that if the spouse owns exclusive property, then that can be omitted from the declaration, from the SALN declaration. And exclusive property can mean many things in law. One of them is, for example, if there's a prenuptial agreement. So I can understand the argument na pag may prenup, if that prenup provides that husband and wife own their property separately, no, they don't own it as a conjugal property or as a community, then pwede siya i-omit sa SALN technically. That's the first point, right? But on a second level, there is nothing that stops a public officer from actually declaring including the wealth of his or her spouse. And part of that goes to why we require SALNs. SALNs are a measure of public transparency by public officers. So if they want to ensure that walang questions about their integrity or their wealth or questions about the lifestyles that they live, it actually makes sense to include the declaration of the spouse. Include nyo na yung properties ng spouse. Anyway, if naka-declare yung property ng spouse, it doesn't make the SALN necessarily false because you'll say in the SALN that it includes the property of your spouse. So that type of transparency calls not anymore to whether a public officer is complying with the law. It's whether the public officer understands yung obligation niya to be transparent to his own constituents.
Well, apart from Senator Escudero, si Raffy Tulfo at ang kanyang misis na si Jocelyn, na nag-declare sila joint SALN. But there's also, for example, Alan Peter Cayetano and Lani Cayetano na hindi pa nagde-declare. How about the market value of inherited property? Shouldn't that be included in the computation?
If the property was inherited by the public officer, then yes, definitely it should be included. No? SALNs are a snapshot of how much a public officer owns at any given time, regardless of where he got or she got his wealth and assets. If the inherited property, however, was inherited by the spouse, then that would be properly excluded from the SALN. So, halimbawa, the spouse comes into this inherited property under civil law that would normally be excluded from the property of the her husband, the public officer. So hindi yung kailangan isama sa SALN. But again, it's one thing to comply with the law. It's a different thing to comply with the expectations of the public about the transparency of their leaders.
If you want to make a stand na wala kang tinatago talaga, no? But speaking of, two institutions the public is still waiting for the declaration of SALNs, while may nauna na sa House of Representatives, marami pa ang hindi pa nag-release ang kanilang mga SALN. And another is the Supreme Court. Is there any legal way or remedy for the public to demand these institutions to be able to declare their SALNs?
Well, going to the Supreme Court has an issuance which regulates the release of SALNs of members of the Supreme Court. Part of this arises from the 2000s cases that were filed against Chief Justice Corona, then later Chief Justice Sereno, concerning or that were based on their SALNs and their either failure to declare or misdeclaration. So, the Supreme Court, you can understand why over time that they have become very guarded against the release of their SALNs. But respectfully, I think and there's a process that you need to go through, in the Supreme Court in order to get their SALN. So you file a proper request. That request is evaluated by the court. But with all due respect, one of the more ancient questions we have in public law is quis custodies, ipsos custodes. So, who guards the guardians? Who watches the watchmen? And
so,
I think
if
the Supreme Court is an unelected body, it is only subject to impeachment, and impeachment has been made very difficult by the own rules of the Supreme Court now. Then it might actually serve public transparency and accountability for the court itself to voluntarily declare its SALNs or release its SALNs. It's within the power of the court. So if the court wants to take seriously or wants the public to take seriously its commitment that it will champion accountability in government, it can begin with the court itself. It's a good example also for the lower court judges to make a similar declaration. Gretchen, all public officers declare SALNs. I'm a tenure track faculty in UP. I declare my SALNs. And I think, it's a good signal for our highest officials to also do that, to show now everyone is accountable in government.
Of course, that's the ideal situation. Most of the time, they don't want to police themselves or somehow lead to their own demise. Pero I want to go to the announcement of the Ombudsman, the current Ombudsman, yesterday that they are releasing the decision of the former Ombudsman on the reversal of the dismissal order of Senator Joel Villanueva relating to the PDAF. Una-una, bakit nagkaroon ng ganyan na parang may secret decision? Lahat ba ng dapat na desisyon ng ombudsman isinasa publiko? Why are we having this whole debate about what's made public and what's not?
Right. I think so. If you look at the law, there really is nothing that requires the ombudsman, to publish his decisions and his reversal of his decisions. But I think what advocates have been saying, what the academics have been saying, is that just because the law doesn't require doesn't mean that the ombudsman isn't bound by tenets of accountability. Part of the reason why the last ombudsman in particular did not release these decisions, I think, and based also on his previous statements, is that you also want to protect the dignity of the public officer, so to speak. No? Na hindi naman siya parang publicly tried. But yun nga, with all due respect, public officers, especially high public officers, take that as a risk when they accept public office, whether if they run for it or they accept an appointment, a high appointment. So if we are to be
if we are to
if we are to be faithful,
go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Oh,
If
if we
we
were
are
to
to
be
dig
faithful to
through
the
that,
ombudsman, to the ombudsman's role as a watchman of the people, na tanod bayan, then it actually helps to declare these or to post all of the decisions and resolutions of the ombudsman. It's a good step, and it furthers public trust in that very important office.
That was actually one of the things that was baffling about the statement of the former ombudsman na hindi naman daw secret decision, but it's supposedly to protect his dignity, which is parang dapat mas lalo pa niyang nirelease yung dismissal order na yun, no? Kasi hindi ba dahil doon niya sinabi that there was no adequate evidence on record that Senator Joel Villanueva was actually involved in the embezzlement of 9.7 million in his PDAF. So parang it ran contrary to the decision, hindi ba?
Yeah, and if you look at, and we're starting to find out more information from this case, just with that single disclosure of the ombudsman. We know now that there were actually two cases filed. One was an administrative case, one was a criminal case. But the content of the reversal itself said na walang forgery according to the ombudsman's more recent findings. So it actually helps the public officer to be exonerated in that way. Kaya hindi din, for me, it's very hard to reconcile the ombudsman's function with the exoneration of Senator Villanueva and the conduct of hiding the decision from the public. Maybe it's para hindi na pag-usapan, no? But sometimes these public conversations actually help public officers, especially those who perform their job well, no? And who have a commitment to public service.
Going to that 2019 dismissal or reversal of the dismissal order, Ombudsman Samuel Martinez said there was cogent basis to grant the motion for reconsideration filed by Villanueva, contesting the earlier findings by former Ombudsman Conchita Carpio Morales. Ano ibig sabihin nun? Pwede ba yun na sabihin lang niya na the signature was forged?
Well, technically, he can. The grounds for a motion for reconsideration, I think even before the ombudsman, would often be errors of fact and errors of law. So, if in the opinion of the graft investigator, the original decision, which found liability for Senator Villanueva, was premised on a misappreciation of the evidence that was presented before the ombudsman initially, then it's within the power of the ombudsman to reverse it. And that's okay, right? I mean, just because a public officer is accused or is charged with a graft offense doesn't mean that that offense is necessarily true. It's possible that the officer has defenses. It's possible that he has evidence that the public hasn't seen or that the media hasn't reported. And the system precisely exists to allow that public officer to clear his or her name. So that's entirely possible. Pero yun nga, no, if that reversal actually results in clearing the public officer, why not disclose? Why not share it with everyone? It also is a good guide for the media in the future, for the public in the future to consider what would be, the possible reasons why the initial report might not be correct, if it were indeed not correct.
Of course, these are decisions back in 2016 and 2019, and we're now in 2025. One would wonder, why is this issue being brought up? Is it possible for the current ombudsman to reverse the reversal of the dismissal order? Kumbaga, baliktarin itong lahat, buklatin muli, at i-pursue yung kaso to see if to see if there's merit in that finding that the signature was forged. Posible ba yun? And at what point does it become double jeopardy?
Okay. With the caveat now that I haven't seen the full record, I only have the decisions of orders of the Ombudsman reversing the 2016 decision. You have to look at the two reversals separately. On the administrative case, I think there's a case to be made that because we have this principle of administrative res judicata, tapos na yung issue na yon on the administrative side, right? The period has lapsed, the time has lapsed, and therefore, if the ombudsman found finally na Senator Villanueva is innocent of the charges against him, then the ombudsman can't reopen that side of the case anymore, yung on the administrative liability side. But the criminal side is different. Criminal cases, after they are investigated, they don't go through or they are not subject to that rule of administrative res judicata. And what the applicable rule is double jeopardy. Now, on that part, double jeopardy only bites or only kicks in when the case is already with the court. And because the dismissal here was in the stage of the ombudsman at the preliminary investigation stage, wala pa siya sa court, hindi pa siya umakyat sa Sandigan Bayan.
So pwede pa.
So technically, it is within the power of the ombudsman to reopen that case and see was there a misappreciation of the evidence that were brought by the parties? Are there new evidence that would actually point to criminal liability? But as a larger comment on how these things go, no, when an investigator reopens a criminal prosecution, one that hasn't been filed with the court yet, it requires a certain amount of evidence per experience na meron ba talagang evidence na bago or meron ba talagang serious misreading? Were there allegations of misdeeds in the initial investigation of the ombudsman or the investigation during the reversal? So, kailangan ma-justify yun by that. Otherwise, the ombudsman would be using its resources to open a case that would not be viable anyway. So, it requires also some judgment and discretion on the part of the current ombudsman.
Speaking of signature forging, no, there's another one that's in the spotlight, which is the Senate witness Orly Guteza. Sinabi ng Manila RTC that they found the notarial signature was forged. What's the effect of that on his testimony? Does that render it null and void?
Well, on the testimony in written form, the one in the affidavit that I think was presented to the Senate, if the notarial signature was forged, then it means that that statement would not hold up, right? It's not a sworn statement anymore. Because the notarial signature is apparently fake. It also will raise very important questions about how that signature was fake, no? And who procured
And
the
why?
fake signature. So who was responsible for the affidavit? But anything that he said in the actual hearing in the Senate is still under oath. And therefore, regardless of what was said in the written statement, what he said in the Senate itself, yung sinabi niya talaga, outside of those written statements would be acceptable as testimony. And if he lied under oath for that, he could also be charged with perjury.
Super final question before we let you go. Speaking of statements made in these hearings, marami na po sa taong bayan ang naiinip ngayon dahil nga there has been no case or not a single charge has been filed against anyone involved in the flood control scandal. Yung mga testimonies dito sa hearings, can they already pass off as, I guess, affidavits? And can they pass off to build the cases? Kasi sabi ng DOJ that they want this airtight, they want certainty of conviction before it files anything. So what's your take on that and the speed of how things are going?
So we need to find a balance between immediate relief, no, to the public anger, which is addressed by speed, and winning these cases. We had just seen an acquittal of a pork barrel case, no, and many acquittals before that, based on lack of evidence or insufficient evidence. And I'm not saying that evidence was really insufficient. I haven't seen the record. I wouldn't be able to make that assessment. But it's a warning sign that we need to be able to translate public anger to actual convictions. that includes working on airtight cases as well as speedy presentations of those cases. It's possible kasi that the case was airtight, but over time it degrades if the case isn't
Pag minadali.
prosecuted
Oo.
quickly. Yeah, so we need to find that balance. And I think statements in the Senate are important evidence, but the real evidence of graft is not what is said. It's in the accounts, diba? It's in the ghost projects, it's in audit findings. Those things are not often said or will not have been said in the Senate. They would be done by independent fact finding. So the Senate testimonies are a good tip, essentially, for our graft investigators. So people need to be patient, but they also need to persevere.
But
It's good for us
what's
to,
the lowest
yeah.
hanging fruit that they could go for to relieve public anger?
So I think the ombudsman is now going after a few cases. So there was a press release, I think yesterday, that they would file certain cases by November 25. And that means that they're basically just putting together the case already in a airtight form and to litigate that. But if my understanding of the press release is correct, it would be filed with the regional trial courts, which means one thing or two things. So one is that the amounts might not be that big, and second is the officials might not be that important yet, or that hindi pa sila yung big fish. And I think the low-hanging fruit is often the smaller, lower-ranked officials who participate in the graft. And I think that's important to go after. No, anyone who has participated in these schemes should be held accountable. But we also need to focus on the really big fish. Kasi ang complaint nga usually with the way that our graft system works is ang dali manghuli nung small fish. Ang hirap hulihin nung masterminds. And if we're really serious about accountability, it's the masterminds we should be going after. So it's a good thing to parang throw to the public now. Okay, look, we're doing this, we're working on this, we're looking for the bigger fish, but it can't stop with the initial cases that are being filed. And as I understand it, just based on what's happening or what's being reported, mukhang hindi naman ganun yung case. It looks like the officials are serious about it.
Okay. Maraming salamat for helping us understand so many of the legal matters here between different issues. And we'll let you go. No, it is October 31, Halloween and pre-All Saints Day. Thank you so much for your time today. We have Paolo Tamase, Assistant Professor at the UP College of Law.
Thank you, Gretchen.
And coming right up, the Philippines is one of the most disaster-prone nations, yet preparedness is lacking still in many communities. Oxfam Pilipinas notes that the country's disaster system has long focused on reactive response. We'll get more insights later after a quick break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The Philippines remains one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world, yet many communities are still caught unprepared when calamities strike. According to Oxfam Pilipinas, the country's disaster system has long been reactive, with most efforts focused on response after the damage is done. But the new Republic Act 12287, or the Declaration of Imminent Disaster Act, aims to change that by allowing the government to act before a disaster happens. It enables the early release of funds for preemptive evacuation, food and cash assistance, and other safety measures once experts warn of imminent danger. This approach, known as anticipatory action, uses forecasts and data to trigger early response. Oxfam urges full enforcement of the new law, emphasizing that preparedness must become a habit. And to talk more about this matter, we are joined by Nina Espinola Abogado, Anticipatory Action Lead of Oxfam Pilipinas. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Gretchen. Thank you for having us.
Okay, as we've been talking about it, you've been with Oxfam since 2013, since Typhoon Haiyan or Yolanda in Filipino speak, and comparing our disaster response readiness back in 2013 up to now in 2025, how much have we improved, and where do we rank in the scale of readiness? What's our grade?
Well, syempre, the entire, since then up to now, it's the same set of disaster risk management approach, no? Kasi the entire system is set up to respond when a disaster strikes. So even the local government, that's they're mandated by RA 10121, which is the Disaster Risk Management Act. So the government is guided by the law to respond when a disaster strikes. But now, because of climate change, several, typhoons are becoming more severe. There are many more cases of floods, landslide, or other hazard. We have to change our approach. And since 2019, when Oxfam was actually supporting a lot of communities to change the practice of acting before a disaster strikes, not after when the damage is done, that little by little and slowly change mindset and practice. And with the new law, that's a game changer. That will change how the entire government and communities would have to prepare before a disaster strikes.
So I asked this question because I hosted an event lately where ASEAN countries would come to the Philippines to actually learn from us, no? Kung paano tayo nagre-respond sa disaster. Dahil nga, number 1 tayo sa World Risk Index.
Yes.
Kumbaga parang sanay na tayo ngayon. And we do see it on the ground na may preemptive evacuation na nangyayari. So we're not that bad, am I correct? But what are the challenges that you're seeing here in terms of I guess you mentioned the whole system being set up as reactive?
Well, not really. That's true for one. Many, not only ASEAN countries but other countries, are actually learning from Philippines how do we manage different types of disaster. Particularly because given the high exposure and vulnerability of Philippines, we're situated in the typhoon belt in the Pacific. We are on the Pacific Ring of Fire. So ang dami nating disaster from bagyo to earthquake to volcanic eruption.
Sa experience na lang, no?
But we are constantly learning how we address them. And policies is one way to ensure that we have the funds to support disaster preparedness, but at the same time response. But we also need to build more capacities. Kasi yan yung medyo kulang talaga, uneven yung capacity of communities to prepare. And because our system is set up to respond, to react after a disaster strikes, we need to change that system. We need to change our culture of preparedness and ensure preparedness becomes a habit, rather than a reaction when, a disaster already happens.
And speaking of capacities, where are we lacking?
Well, as we have seen in most local governments, capacity is very uneven. Some LGUs who are more willing to learn how to prepare ahead, like they use forecast information. For example, in the communities that we support, they used forecast information to trigger their action before a disaster strikes. But if you don't have access to capacity building, if you don't know how to use your resources, so a local government have 5% of their ERA to be used for disaster risk management fund. Of that 5%, 30% of that is quick response fund, 70% is preparedness. But because the limitation of the law now is actually the local government cannot use that in advance to trigger their action.
So, kala ko 70% preparedness.
Preparedness. But because the law is linked to use when a state of calamity has been declared. So, even if that is set up, 70% is set up, they're actually afraid to be flagged by COA. Kasi sabi that's linked to a state of calamity. But now, with the new law, with RA 12287, that would change how they use the funds. They can.
Yun siguro yung dahilan. Kaya nagtataka ako, kahit hindi pa sobrang lakas ng bagyo sa isang syudad, nagdideklara na sila ng state of calamity.
Because
kasi kailangan daw nila ayusin yung flood drainage system nila and etc. That's one of the major reasons.
That's one of the major reasons of how they can use it. They still first need to declare a state of calamity before they do their response. But now with the new law, that would be a game changer.
Now, how does this change things?
It would allow them, one, it changed our system from being reactive to proactive, meaning we can set measures, we can prepare ahead hazard strikes sa community, and at the same time, particularly local government, they can tap now the 70%, use it for preparedness activity or activate anticipatory action measure. For example, apart from preemptive evacuation, they can already distribute goods or preposition, distribute cash, so people would evacuate safely. They can, buy essential during evacuation, such as food, medicine, water. We have seen in the past when you give people these types of assistance, they fortify, they strengthen their shelter. 35% of them use the
Bago pa masira.
fund. Yeah, so for houses,
I-reinforce mo na.
yes, for houses that can withstand a strong typhoon, they repair their houses so that they can stay safely. For others, they evacuate on a safe evacuation center or location. Others harvest crops early so hindi masayang talaga pag na bagyo lang o nabaha. Or for fishing communities, they keep their fishing boats. So imagine when you activate or practice these measures, it will not only reduce economic losses, but it will save lives. Kasi then people are, in their safe zones, they have foods, until they wait until a typhoon or a flood, subside. So it changes your preparedness habit, and the local government would be then more focused of ensuring all of its, citizens would be safe and can recover faster. Because
We're talking, of course, of the new Republic Act 12287 or the Declaration of Imminent Disaster Act. Does this get from the same pool of funds, though? Nabanggit niyo yung IRA na 5%. Doon pa rin ba siya kukuha o may additional funding ito?
So currently, right now, Oxfam is also a part of the technical working group supporting to draft the IRR of the law. So when the financing component was looked at, yes, that would still be part of their local disaster risk management fund, yung 70%. At least for the local government.
Mas maaga lang siya matitrigger.
Yes.
when
Maaga
it's
matitrigger
actually
at pwede nilang gamitin ahead. Kasi dati nga hindi natatakot sila because of being flagged by COA. And at the national level, so they would be able to use, their program funds to ensure that anticipatory action measures can be used, to prepare agencies, ahead of a disaster. So that would support, for example, agriculture. And by the way, we're not only talking about typhoons and floods. We're also looking at drought, which is, has been affecting us. So either for as we call it, rapid mga onset na hazards such as that or drought, that fund can be
Bago
used
pa
already.
matuyo, mag-build ka na ng pumps or
Or distribute water kits. So, bago mag-peak yung drought or bago bumaha, ilikas mo na sila. Bago bumagyo, palakasin, patibayin na yung bahay. Ilipat mo sila sa safe location. Protektahan mo yung mga important assets, livelihood. Or kaya sa social services, yung iba binibigyan ng mga kits para hindi mabasa ang libro, ang medical supply. So, this set of measures will be very helpful to ensure people would be safe before a disaster strikes, and based on studies, they recover faster kapag they act ahead before a disaster.
Speaking of anticipatory action, kasi this will be based on data.
Yes.
On the incoming disaster that will or might happen. Pero limitado rin yung ating resources so you wouldn't want to spend needlessly. So how sound is our technical expertise now when it comes to that? Saan tayo nakaangkla? At ano pa yung dapat nating i-invest dito sa mga forecast technologies?
Yes. So for example, ang Pag-asa was really developing yung impact-based forecasting na. So the science is there. We are learning to improve how we will disseminate our early warning messages. Kasi what is important right now is that when we receive an warning information, it will not only tell us what is coming. A typhoon is coming. That's what we need to do is to use the forecast to tell us us what to do. Kaya from just forecast of data or information, it should be shifted to impact-based forecasting. Kung ang bagyo, signal 4 or 5, itong mga lugar na mababa, storm surge kayo, kung nasa coastal area kayo, kung light materials yan, pwede kayong masira ng strong winds, etc. Same rin kapag flood ang hazard mo. So our forecast, system and the agencies are actually working very hard to shift from just purely forecast-based to impact-based. Sasabihin sa'yo, hindi lang ano ang darating, ano ang magiging epekto kapag kayo ay natamaan ng ganitong mga klaseng
But how
hazard.
good now is the information dissemination network from the national down to the municipalities that will be affected by these disasters? Kamusta naman yung pag-appreciate nila doon sa impormasyon? Kasi nakakita rin ako niyan ng mga parang dito babahain, tapos napaka-technical nung datos.
Correct.
Okay naman, effective naman. Isa-isa yung observation.
This is one thing that still needs to be improved. Kasi yun nga, from disseminating a very technical information to ensure that people understands it. Kasi, for example, yung Typhoon Yolanda, di ba yun yung malaking learning? Hindi naintindihan ng local yung storm surge, pero may local dialect sila. Kung ginamit mo yun, naintindihan nila. So, the same way when we disseminate information, and even local governments, they need to be trained on how to communicate it effectively. So pag narinig nila yung forecast information, alam nila yung ibig sabihin. Kaya importante yung community participation sa pagbubuo ng mga triggers para ma-activate mo yung anticipatory action. Kasi kung may local term sila doon o may mga triggers silang nakikita, dapat na isasama yun sa plano para pag sinabing, likas na kasi either signal number 4, ito ang epekto sa iba't ibang parte ng community. Hindi na sila magdadalawang isip na ano bang ibig sabihin nun. So sila mismo, they would practice anticipatory action para maging safe sila. And that is one space that we advocate to support local government to be trained how to interpret, understand forecast information so it will be translated to effective early warning systems.
And looking ahead, how do you imagine anticipatory action to change the way we respond? Tama ba sabihin na respond?
Oo.
Or respond or handle disasters in the future?
So, syempre, nakikita natin magiging malaki yung change niyan. Una, in terms of culture of preparedness, because we wanted to ensure, hindi lang tayo nagre-react kapag natatamaan na tayo ng bagyo. Pangalawa, economic-wise, maraming studies na yung nagsasabi na for every peso spent on anticipatory action, that's equivalent to 50, 100 savings. So imagine you were able to use these funds to prepare more, to reduce economic losses, to save lives, or maybe build more infrastructure that would keep people rather than always rebuilding. And then third, if we're able to actually do this, yung humanitarian impact sa human development would help to improve. Kasi from one disaster after another, ang hirap nagre-recover ng ating mga especially vulnerable communities. Kasi in the first place, they're already economically challenged, and then maapektuhan pa sila. It takes months, years to recover. But if you have anticipatory action measures, based on a recent study we have conducted, less than a month, nakaka-fully recover sila compare kapag wala silang assistance before.
So which community have you seen this?
We have seen communities in Cagayan. Itong mga multiple cyclones last year, yung from Cristin to Pepito, di ba, remember that last year? So we have seen communities that were able to, in Cagayan, in Eastern Samar, in Mindanao, when they practice anticipatory action measure, they can quickly recover. Yun nga sa study, less than a month, they are able to bounce back and
Pero paano nila nagawa yun? I mean, kasi sa batas lang nung
But because even before the law, there's already some support and practice of anticipatory action measures by different agencies. For one, yes, so one, Oxfam is supporting that, other UN agencies, other NGOs, meron na since 2019, hindi lang institutionalized. But now with the law, this would be really part of the disaster preparedness plans and system, and funds could be used to act ahead a disaster and not after it strikes.
Kakayanin naman natin mga Pilipino na mag-anticipate kasi sa kultura natin mahilig tayo sa isang kahig, isang tuka, tingi-tingi, gagawin na pag nangyari na, di ba? Nasanay tayo sa ganun eh.
Actually, yun nga yung maganda with shifting the system with the law. No? So, we will be able to support educating people. No? Families should be prepared ahead of disaster. Yun nga, building a culture of preparedness. Now, why wait when we can actually anticipate and make disaster preparedness a habit? So, from bahala na to handa na.
Wow. Sarap naman marinig yun. At kailangan nga natin maghanda kasi we are in the midst of holiday season. And so
it's still typhoon season.
Yeah, pareho pa rin. Okay, maraming salamat. Thank you for your time, and we hope to see the IRR of that law and with Oxfam behind it, of course. We have Nina Espinola Abogado, Anticipatory Action Lead of Oxfam Pilipinas. Meanwhile, let's end this week on a high note. The Michelin Guide has officially launched its first ever list for the Philippines. It highlighted over 100 restaurants from Manila, nearby provinces, and Cebu. Tourism officials said the launch is expected to boost the country's food tourism and put Filipino cuisine on the international stage. The guide will also serve as inspiration for aspiring chefs and restaurants aiming to reach world-class status. 8 restaurants were awarded 1 Michelin star for high-quality cooking, while Helm in Taguig City received 2 stars for excellent cuisine. Gallery by Shell also earned the Green Star for its commitment to sustainable gastronomy. Michelin said the recognition highlights the growing sophistication and creativity of the local dining scene. Meantime, 25 restaurants received the BIP Gourmand recognition for serving high-quality food at reasonable prices. These include popular spots such as Manam at the Triangle, Lampara, and the Pig and Palm. 74 restaurants were also named Michelin selected for offering above-average cuisine, including Blackbird, Metis, and Lore. The guide said these restaurants exemplify excellent service, unique culinary techniques, and strong value for your money. Mukhang marami tayong susubukan ngayong Halloween, pati na rin ng All Saints at All Souls Day. Sana bukas yung mga nakikita nating restaurant, Excited for what is to come for the local dining industry. In the meantime, we hope you stay safe today. And we hope you get good rest over the weekend. That wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Ho. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.